Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We are finally in February, the month of Texas Chainsaw. So yeah, there's a new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie coming out on the 18th on Netflix, and I'm pretty excited for it. I think I'm one of the minority who thinks it looks like fun, and I don't know if it looks good necessarily from the trailer, but trailers are always misleading. It definitely looks watchable. It definitely looks like enjoyable. I don't know. As I've been watching these movies, have realized that none of these movies, besides the original, have ever been like masterpieces. They're kind of just meant to be like fun horror. So yeah, so far I've seen 4 in the franchise. I don't know if I should keep going to try to watch all of them. I would love to know your ranking. If you've seen all of them, or if you've seen half or a few, I'd love to know your ranking. So leave me a comment, and if you think there is one that I've missed that I should really watch, let me know as well. Subscribe, of course, to my channel. We are steadily working our way to 200 subscribers, and that is very, very cool. So thanks for subscribing. First film, of course, so I'm gonna be doing best to worst. Obviously, the best film in the franchise, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre from Tobe Hooper, the original 1974 film. I first watched this film a couple of years ago and was just so shocked and blown away. It is beautiful, it is incredible, it is haunting. It is one of the most kind of, I would say, unique slasher films that we have. It's very much its own thing, and I really love that about that film. So basically, in pretty much all of these movies, but especially in the original, it just sort of follows a group of young adults kind of traveling their way through Texas in like the heat, and all the things that could go wrong in this situation goes wrong. One thing I really loved about the original is the way that it's directed, the way that it's shot. It's got this kind of gorgeous film grain to it, and it's just like feels very like dreamy at times because of it. Especially in the first like 30 minutes, especially in the opening, like everyone's having a good time. They were like really hot, so they're kind of like exhausted, but they're sort of like obviously hanging out. They're on this road trip. It's kind of like good vibes for a little bit, and then when things start to go like worse and worse, I just love the way that the camera sort of shows us this. There's a lot of these sort of low shots which give off this really sort of haunting vibe. And of course, like when we get to all of the like major moments where we see Leatherface and where he starts killing these people one by one, it's just such a disturbing film. And I found out that Tobe Hooper actually didn't want it to be R-rated, so they like tried to put as little blood and sort of like gore as they could, but it still ended up being R-rated. So I really like this idea of a movie that's not trying to scare you visually, it's more sort of scaring you through atmosphere and through like the vibes, because there are so many things where like in one scene Leatherface hooks this girl on a hook as though she's like meat, and yet you don't see any of that. You don't see any blood, you don't see how that happens, you just see her like hooked. And so not seeing a lot of the blood, of the gore, even when someone gets sawed up. Things are sort of implied, but you don't see everything. And I just really like that way of showing something that is horrifying, you know, that form of horror, because a lot of the times the things that we can't see are the most scary. Yeah, overall, I absolutely love that film. It has one of the most iconic horror moments for me, and that final scene with Sally at the back of the truck and her laughing hysterically is like been embedded into my mind, and it's definitely something that I will probably pay homage to one day if I ever get to make a horror movie, because it's like so iconic. The next movie is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 2003. This is sort of like a remake of the original, and it stars Jessica Biel. And yeah, I thought I wasn't gonna like this movie, but I ended up really enjoying it, and I thought it was so much fun. And whilst it does take a while, when you get to the middle, there are some sort of like lags in terms of pacing. I loved the first 30 minutes, and that sequence with the young woman is so disturbing and so scary and so, I don't know if it's something I've seen in a, I mean, obviously you've seen that in a horror movie, but the way that it's like done and the build up to it is just really cool, especially for a horror movie from 2003. Even the way that it's shot is really cool and interesting. I don't know, I really liked it. I also really loved probably like the last 50 minutes of the movie. Jessica Biel's actually very good in this. I don't know what I was expecting from her, but she gives quite a good performance. I think the incorporation of old footage mixed into the movie, both at the beginning and the end, is quite an interesting, kind of nice take. I think it definitely allows you to connect both new and old, which is really nice. Okay, so next movie is the sequel to the first one. This is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. This is the film from 1986, which is also directed by Tobe Hooper. And I thought this was very weird at first. It's very different to the original in terms of tone and just like the whole sort of energy. It's very, I would say, campy, and there's a lot more comedy, and it doesn't take itself too seriously. It essentially has a lot of fun with the subject, which I thought was a really interesting direction to take it, which I actually kind of liked. Although it spends so much time on Leatherface and his family, and that's one thing about this franchise that I feel like I'm just a minority in. I think people really like to know more about Leatherface, but for me, I've realized that I prefer seeing him as a villain and an antagonist. I don't really want to like delve deep into his life and his family. So the ranking goes on. You'll see that the movies that spend a lot of time with Leatherface are the ones that are my least favorites, which brings me to my next film, which is number 4 in this ranking, the worst of the ones that I've seen. This is Texas Chainsaw 3D from 2013. I think this one is universally recognized as like one of the worst ones, but I have to say it's not as terrible as I thought it was going to be. Like, it actually is very watchable, and would I watch this again? Maybe, probably. If I was doing like a Texas Chainsaw marathon, I probably would watch this again. Like, it's definitely not the worst movie I've ever seen. And besides having the most random cast ever with Alexandra Daddario, who I really like, and she's really good in The White Lotus. Trey Songz and Scott Eastwood, just like, who even cast these people? Story for me was the worst part of this movie. I just didn't get why we needed to know so much about this family, and putting like an emphasis on the family just didn't make any sense. And then starting the film off recapping by putting clips of the original doesn't really set your movie up to do well, because it will never be as good as the original. So already you're setting yourself up for disappointment. It's just such an unnecessary plot point, and there's just something about this movie specifically that makes zero sense. And you're just like, it's supposed to be a direct sequel to the original, and yet that makes it worse, because you're just like, what how is it a direct sequel? How is she the child from that day when she's like 20 and this was like 40 years ago? Like, nothing in this movie makes sense. The script is terrible, but there's still some really great scenes. All the sequences are really fun. All the kills are really fun. There's a lot of gore. It's very different to the vibe of the originals. It definitely has more of like a soul feel to it. Definitely 2000s movie vibes. So yeah, that's my ranking of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. What are your favorites? I'd love to know. Subscribe, of course. Give this video a like, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.